time. How y'all doing tonight? So this is me at the end of my work day, needing to get some of these thoughts out. I've been wanting to talk about building teams, building Nigerian teams for a long time, and I've touched on it a bit in my most recent episodes of Building Black Technology. Let me just do an introduction. This is Olori Lolade, Skin to the Monies. Olori Lolade Shiambola, founder of NOIR Labs, noirpress, creator of Portal X, creator of New World Haven. So many exciting things in the pipeline. Super grateful to get to do the kind of work that I get to do, to build systems and structures and platforms and technologies and experiences that liberate Black people and all people from within. So thank you to the Most High and to my ancestors and spirit team for supporting me in this work. Thank you to my community. Thank you to my family. Thank you to my sister, to my mentor, Uncle John, my mom, all the people who support us unconditionally. Shout out to Desiree Gordon, all of our best clients. So many people we've gotten to work with, we've been, blessed to work with at NOIR Labs. You can learn more at noirlabs.space. noirlabs.org is our nonprofit or our social enterprise. It's the .org is really the umbrella for all of the things that we do. And the .space is our corporate services. So we're an ecosystem. We're an ecosystem, and there's so much there that I will not go into this call or in this message, but I want to talk about building teams. And so for those who don't know me, and even those who do, you may not know the history of my team building experience and where my philosophy comes from. What I can quickly say, I know I look like I'm 25, and I plan on looking like this forever until I'm 70 something, if I decide to stick around that long. But I've been building teams, I've been leading teams since before YouTube existed. Okay. So I have been on all sorts of teams and all sorts of industries, working with all sorts of people from all over the world in so many different disciplines. And I've learned quite a few things along the way, right? I've picked up some skills. And, I've worked in some toxic environments, which I imagine most of us have had, some sort of experience, maybe short-lived or longer. And I've worked in some really harmonious and joyful and beautiful environments, fruitful environments. And the difference, the most harmonious environments have been the ones where there was the most clarity of vision and clarity of responsibility, clarity of output and expectations and connection. The most harmonious work experiences involved connection with my teammates, with my collaborators, with my colleagues, authentic, meaningful, sustainable connection. I could go on, but those are the things that I really seek to cultivate in the spaces that I lead, with the teams that I lead. My goal is always to cultivate harmony, joy, connection. And in order for that to happen, there has to be a strong sense of clarity. There has to be also a strong sense of purpose, right? Which is what a clear vision helps to create. So where do I want to start? So NOIR Labs was formally incorporated in 2019 on Yale's campus, right? We were part of the Sci-City Summer Fellowship. Sci-City is Yale's entrepreneurial institute, so to speak, founded by Alibaba co-founder Joseph Tsai, with a huge endowment to the university for this center. I was very blessed to benefit from so many of their programs with the fellowship. Summer Fellowship was one of the biggest blessings. And at that time, we did a lot of training on team building, on institutional development, just all the things that we needed to do to formalize our startups. This was 2019. I had been working on the previous iteration of NOIR Labs, which was Exodus to Africa, since 2006, baby. And so when I say before YouTube, of course, 2006, fresh out of college, wanting to make a difference, wanting to do something that would support the African continent. understanding that, I was estranged from my homeland because of bullshit immigration policies, excuse my French or don't, and wanting to do something about that, wanting to do something about this global setup that said that African people could be literally locked out of our homelands because in order to survive, we left, to another country to just be able to make a living and to support our families. And then our relatives pass away and we can't even go see them because we don't have papers, right? So this was one of the key genesis or genesis, is that a word, for my interest in going back to the continent. Of course, I was always homesick from a little girl. When I left Lagos, nobody told me I wasn't coming back. They didn't tell me that. They told me I was just visiting these other places, So I was always attached to Lagos. I was attached to my grandmothers. I had a strong affinity, deep affinity for home, for Lagos. And so the idea of being stuck in a country that was foreign to me and not being able to go back home was quite devastating, to be honest. And so therein began my desire, my pursuit to reconnect with the continent in a more tangible way and to really help reverse this brain drain, right? To help to create a reality on the continent where we would actually want to live there and want to be there long term and be able to pass that heritage down to our children. I have a daughter who I adore and who I want to know where she comes from, and I want her to feel safe spending time on the land of her ancestors. So I have had a deep connection with home since a little girl, and my homesickness has instructed all my life's work. In addition to the inspiration of Malcolm X that took hold of me from a little girl watching the film in the theater with my mom and my brother. I talked about that in many, many episodes and many, many things that I've done. And so I want you to understand that, because when it came time to build our team for NOIR Labs, it was important for me to hire Nigerian talent. It was critical. And it was one of those kind of spiritual things where you find yourself, searching upward and something is tugging at you. Your spirit is tugging at you. It's like, no, well, that's not what we're going to do. And it got to the point where my spirit was just like, that's not what we're going to do. Okay. So, so I remember at the top of 2021, really needing to build out our content team for noirpress, and having been connected with a slew of young people on the continent, slew of young people in Nigeria who are passionate about changing the country, who are passionate about creating something different and better and new. This was just in the aftermath of Lekki Tollgate Massacre. I had been connected with some really great souls, one of which is on my team now. I'm so excited. Shout out to Sankara. Thank you for all that you do and who you are. So yeah, we were actively organizing, building this new political party, and there were so many youth. And I just remember just being in the group chat and observing and being like, wow, these kids are so passionate and so intelligent and so capable, And like I said, my spirit was like, you're not gonna hire on no, Indians. I remember speaking to a web developer in India many, many months before that, before the Lekki Tollgate massacre happened, trying to organize with him. And because this is what everybody does or did back then, especially. You needed a web developer, you needed a graphic designer, you needed a writer, you went to Upwork, you went to, what's the other one? Is this other freelancing site, Fiverr? You went to these sites and you looked for somebody in South Asia. It's probably going to be the lowest price, and and probably work fast for you and deliver what you needed. But they would probably be racist. They would probably treat you the same way they would treat you if you went to their country, because I've been to India. I know what that is like, okay, being a Black woman in India. I still love, the beauty of the country, but it's just, they just don't know that they're Black. Just somebody told them that they're not Black, and so they're confused. But that's a whole other conversation. And so the idea of taking this hard-earned money, this tiny little bit of money that we had to grow this this institutional, liberatory, this cultural movement, for us to take what little we had and give it to a group of people who really don't value us, who really disrespect us, who really have no connection to our cause. It didn't make sense. And I could see why Spirit said, nah, you not gonna hire them. You're gonna find some Nigerian talent, right? And so it hasn't been easy. Okay. It's not like, because the thing is, you go on Fiverr, you go on Upwork, especially at that time, I haven't done it recently. It wasn't easy to find Nigerian talent on those platforms. A lot of Nigerian talent didn't go there because they weren't able to get jobs. Because again, global racism, white hegemony, the exportation of American capitalism, right? They would go on these platforms and nobody wants to hire them. People assume that they're 419ers, which, you know, there are 419ers out there, right? So, so many learnings. There's so many things I could say about this, but it was shocking to me to find kids, young people with web development, coding talent who literally could not find work on these platforms. Like that to me was just like completely mind blowing. And so when you look at the situation in a place like Nigeria, you see how the hostage takers, the savages who run the so-called government, I don't even like to call them leaders. I don't like to call them government. They're just, you know, they barely exist to me. But these people who have created a situation where you could be a young person in Nigeria, fresh out of school with all these skills, even though education is subpart in some places and in some ways, a lot of these kids have been very resourceful, you know, very capable of using the internet to learn the skills that they wanted to learn for themselves, right? And not waiting on their failed criminal enterprise that called itself a government to educate them and to equip them and to give them jobs and create an environment where they could, you know, be employable and, you know, and grow in their careers, right? So a lot of these kids were very talented that I was meeting. And I got to shout out MOP. Let me shout out MOP because that's the main group where I was meeting a lot of these young people. Movement of the People, founded by Sheilin Kuti and Olori Tundu. So let's get into what it takes to build a team, what I've learned, and the critical things, because I really want to encourage those of you who are looking to expand your capacity. I know a lot of artists, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of nonprofits, a lot of for-profits. You might actually be running a decent operation. You may be making money, but maybe your staff is overworked or you're overworked if it's just you. Maybe there's so many things that you want to do that you're not able to do because you just don't have the talent in terms of, you know, people on your team. You don't have the capacity. There's only 24 hours in a day. You can't work around the clock every day, 24/7, you know? So you got to hire people. And when you think about hiring people, it can be overwhelming, right? First of all, you got to find the people. Where do you find them? How do you get the money to be able to afford them, right? So it's one thing to be in a stage where you have a lot of money and you're looking for talent and you can afford to hire high level, you know, high quality talent. It's another thing to be at a stage where you don't have a lot of money, but you still have the capacity to, you know, to pay a freelancer a little bit here and there, right? Those are specific situations that we could talk about. But in either of those situations, you still need to be able to hire well. Because if you have a lot of money and you hire the wrong people, you're going to lose a lot of money and time. And it's going to be very painful. And if you have a little bit of money and you hire the wrong people, it's going to be even more painful because it was a little bit of money that you had, right? And so you want to use that investment very, very well, right? You want to be sure that the people that you invest in are worth it, that they're going to get you what you need, what you want. They're going to deliver on what it is that you need. You can't really afford, especially as a, you know, as a young entrepreneur, starting out entrepreneur, early entrepreneur, pre-revenue business, whatever. You don't necessarily have the time or the resources to waste, right? So how do you find the people and how do you ensure that they give you what it is that you need? You get exactly what you're paying for. The beauty of platforms like Upwork and Fiverr is that there is some sort of guarantee on your money, right? You put your money in the platform. If somebody doesn't serve you the way you desire to be served, you get your money back, right? But what we found, I think we had paid this guy. There was a particular guy we worked with on Upwork, I believe it was. And, you know, just unresponsive, right? Just, he couldn't care less. He had like 10 million people paying him $100 to build a website, or whatever it was that we were looking for him to do at the time. I don't even remember. It wasn't a lot of work, you know, but Or maybe we were trying to get him to do a lot of work and he just wasn't responsive, so we didn't give him more, that full scope. But you have people platforms like that, but they might guarantee your resources, but they still can't guarantee that you're not going to deal with a racist. You can, file a complaint, you can do all those things, but there's a process that one needs to follow to bring people in to your organization, to your community, to your team, right? And what I'm going to share that we've applied and what I've learned from my experience is, these are tools that could work across the board, whether you're hiring in Nigeria, you're hiring in South Asia, you're hiring in Europe, you're hiring in America, right? South America, wherever you're hiring people who live next door to you, you still want to put certain things in place in order to make sure that you hire well, right? I have built software teams across multiple companies, and I have built teams for nonprofit activities. I have built teams for school projects. I've built teams across the board, and I've been cultivating teams for NOIR Labs. And I want to talk about how in 2020, we had about 11 people on our team, and we were not paying $1. And these were people, some of these people were working full-time. They were very eager, very excited to be on our team. And this was literally the magnetization of, the vibrationally aligned people who were passionate about who we were and what we were doing at the time, right? And what we're still doing. So let's talk about what I call filtering in. That is the first step. Regardless of where you are hiring from or how much you're spending, you want to be able to filter in. And what do I mean when I say that? You want to make sure that you are filtering the people that you engage as potential team members through a set of filters, some particular markers that are critical for you as a human, if you're the team lead, if you're the person doing the hiring, and that are critical for your organization, right? And how do you do that? Well, for you to be able to get aligned and to attract people who are aligned with who you are and what your organization is about, you have to be very clear on that. Like a lot of us as founders, as entrepreneurs, as founders, as entrepreneurs, a lot of us are not fully clear. A lot of us haven't taken the time to articulate. I'm gonna keep talking about Tiny House, but those are my people, and we're doing pro bono work with them, right? And so we started out by articulating the vision and mission, right? And so if you are a founder, you're an artist, and you don't understand, like you cannot articulate who you are and what you do, you got to start there first, right? Because that clarity, again, allows for the alignment of somebody else who's passionate about who you are and what you do. I believe in building values-driven organizations because when you do that, you are less likely to run into value conflicts, right? Which can totally break an organization, but they can also break personal relationships. If you bring somebody in who maybe you're close to, maybe you're cool with, maybe they're a homie, you bring them in to work with you, and then you find out that y'all really don't have the same values. And then your relationship goes to, to SHIT. So when you are clear as an individual, as a founder, as a business owner, on your purpose, and the purpose of your business, and the intentions and the expectations, the plans, the vision for your business, for your organization, for your enterprise, for your temple, then the people who come to you will also have to be clear. They will have to be aligned with what you are doing and who you are and who you are seeking to become and what you're seeking to become. So that's the first thing, right? And so if you are an organization that's already done all of that, you've defined your mission, vision, your values, your plan, your roadmap, then when you are engaging with people who are interested in working with you, you're asking the right questions, right? And I'm going to talk about how you create those questions. I want to step back because before you even bring those people, you got to find the people. You got to figure out where to get them from, right? And I have just been fortunate. I use the group chat that I mentioned before, MOP, I use that a lot, right? Because again, if I'm going to invest what, focused resources we have in talent, I want to invest it not just in Black people, not just in African people, not just in Nigerian people. I want to invest it in pretty radical Nigerian people, pretty visionary like Nigerian people who are serious about liberation, because that's what we do as an organization. We are inspiring and operationalizing Black liberation worldwide through our tech and community building. So the people that we work with, we need them to be passionate about that. That is very important for us. It's hard for me to imagine working with people who don't care about that, right? Why would you work here? It doesn't matter how much money we have, how much money we pay you. We don't want to pay people who don't care about liberating Black people. Why would we do that, right? So your purpose might be different. Your purpose might not be about social justice at all, right? But whatever your purpose is, you want to go into the spaces where there are people who are passionate about what you do. You want to be in those spaces. You want to be engaging in those spaces. You want to be part of those communities, right? And so if you're embedded in those spaces, whether it's professional networks that have group chats or events or whatever, those are spaces where you're going to find people who have similar, aligned values and aligned interests with you, right? So alignment. So be in the spaces where the people who care about what you care about are. That's a real obvious one, right? And so when you're in those spaces and you have a position that you want to advertise, you have whatever it is that you need for your organization, you just have a project that you need help with, it'll be easy to just drop it in those spaces. There might be, moderators might have rules. I've been very fortunate in a lot of spaces I've been in where folks have not, restricted my ability to share these opportunities, right? Especially because they recognize that the folks in their communities are looking for these types of opportunities. They're looking to get paid to do liberatory work, right? So it's important to be in a values aligned space, right? A space that can appreciate what your organization is doing and that would want to actually help you find talent. Then there might be spaces where you got to pay. And so we've been really fortunate that we've been in spaces where we've been able to attract talent without having to pay to advertise. But of course, you can use platforms like, what's it called? My brother works for them, Indeed. Indeed has Nigerian listings. They have international listings. They're job platforms that have international, audiences. And so you can absolutely use them. LinkedIn does international listings. So you can absolutely utilize those. I recommend it. But if you are interested in targeting as hyper specifically as we are, then you're probably going to need to go a little bit more specific. So even if you go to LinkedIn and you create a post there, you're going to want to post it in a group that is specific to what your organization does, right? So those are some of my tips for finding people. Of course, you can use the usual means, post it on your social media, send it out to your network. If you have a newsletter, put it in your newsletter. Whatever, all the ways that we can communicate with others, right? Of course, with that, you want to have an actual job description. You want to have an actual detailing of what the person needs to do, whether it's a project or a full-time role. And you want to define what they get, right? You might talk about compensation. You might talk about perks, education, resources, opportunities. What are the special benefits of working with your organization that they need to be aware of that might get them excited? And you got to talk, and that also talk about who you are as an organization, what you do, right? Your job description, your role invitation should really introduce your organization, get people excited about who you are and what you do, and provide clarity on what it is that you need them to do, right? So that's how you're going to find the people. So when you actually are engaging the potential, team members, you're, first of all, starting that conversation with clarity on who you are as an organization, what you do and what you're seeking to accomplish and what you want them to help you accomplish, what they benefit. And then you're creating this is all part of the filtering in. You're creating a process through which they get to express to you how aligned they are with who you are and what you need at the time, right? The way that we do that, when we send out these job postings or post on our website or whatever, we send it to our network, we have like a type form where people can, put in their resume or their LinkedIn profile, which is great. But once we see that there's potential that you could actually do the job, you actually have the skills and talent. Once we see that, excuse me, y'all, it's late. Once we see that, we send you a human guide, right? So I talked about the human guides in previous episodes just a little bit, and I'm going to do a full deep dive on the human guide in one of the upcoming episodes. It's interesting. I'm calling this building black technology. Part of building black technology is building solid teams, right? And then the foundational principles of the new world are critical for us and the type of technology that we are building. In order to build beautiful, sustainable, fruitful, powerful, transformative black technology, you got to build solid teams. You got to build teams that are cohesive, that are coherent, that are collaborative, that are connected, that are joyful, happy teams. Happy people getting shit done. That's my motto when it comes to team building, right? And then we'll talk about agile. A lot of my thinking when it comes to team building is rooted in agile methodology. I have a project management professional PMP certification years ago. I got it years ago. And I have a Scrum Master certification, certified Scrum Master. And I have a lot of experience as a project manager, as a team builder, as a Scrum Master. And so just the excitement of working in environments where people believe in the importance of the human, in the team and in the company and in the work, and not just the importance of the work and the results and the benefits of the work and the profit, that was really nourishing to my soul. And I really enjoyed working that way. And so it has, since then, very much heavily influenced how I work with people and how I build teams. So you can look more into agile methodology. I think I have one video or so up on my personal YouTube about agile, maybe more than one. But what I'm talking about here is very much rooted in agile methodology. Some people know it as Scrum, Kanban. These are all related frameworks within agile. So human guides. So the way that we do the human guide is after defining our vision, mission, purpose, values as an organization, which is a deeper process I can talk about in the future, we developed a form. We like to call them the Jesus because they are not just your average form. They are reflective experiences. They're digital experiences that help you to uncover information that you may not otherwise have been aware of, about yourself or about an important topic. So we created the GIZA in which we get to know you as a candidate. We're asking you, we have a color test. People don't really love the what is it called? The 16 personalities, those Myers-Briggs, those tests. Don't love them. They can be a little bit intensive. I love the color tests. And this is one of those things I learned from Science City at Yale. The color test is a little bit simpler. It's a little bit more fun. The questions that you answer, they're more so about, they just feel good to answer. The Myers-Briggs are okay, and I guess it depends on where you take, the quiz. But the color test is just fun. It gives you a color. It's not just like a stamp of a few letters, right? And so people we have found really love doing this process, doing the human guide. Most people, 99% of candidates complete the human guide process. They complete the color test because at the end of the day, these are really thoughtful, reflective questions that help them to get to know themselves better. They're rarely being asked these questions. Most people are not asked these questions generally in life, and especially not in the process of applying for a job. But people really appreciate being given the opportunity to reflect and understand more about themselves and what motivates them in whatever, role that they are engaging in and applying for, and, just thinking about their career goals. Like we ask really, pertinent, in-depth questions. They're not super personal, but we ask about your values. We ask about your superpowers. What are you amazing at? And this is not from the color test. These are our questions. The color test is an independent platform that we've selected that we use for that process. But in addition to the color test, we have our human guide questions. And so we're also asking how you work, like, in what environments do you thrive? In what environments do you shut down? How do you like to receive feedback? All of these things help us to understand you as a person and help us to envision how you would work in our organization, in our community, right? Do your values align with ours? And do your strengths align with what we need? Do your ways of working align with the way that we work? The way that I work, the way that our team works. And it's not a perfect process, but it's far, far better than just reading somebody's resume, interviewing them, and taking a risk. At the end of the day, anybody you hire, you're taking a chance because anything can happen. Sometimes people aren't very genuine in the interview process, but maybe there's some miscommunication, misunderstanding that becomes evident as they start the role. And some people are not honest in the interview process. The human guide is not something you could fake. It's not something where you can make up stuff. I had somebody who submitted answers from ChatGPT, and they were not smart enough to remove the headers and the footers that come with your GPT answers, right? What are we going to talk about? We're not going to have a conversation, because the kind of person that wants to work at NOIR Labs is someone who enjoys answering these types of questions, who enjoys being reflective, who enjoys being self-aware. So these are things that help us to identify, okay, this is our type of person in the first place, right? So we review that, and then we have a conversation, right? And so we've done it a few different ways over the years, but depending on the time frame, depending on what team they're going to be working on, we have the existing team review their human guide, the team that they would be interacting with. We have them review the human guide for this person who seeks to come into the team, and then we bring them into a conversation. And we don't like to call them interviews. It's a conversation. We just want to get to know you. And so that's where we have the opportunity to ask about specific things on the human guide and potentially ask about things on the resume as well, right? There's a few different ways this can be done. This is something that we do for organizations. So if it's something that you're interested in for your team, for your organization, you can go to noirlabs.space and send in a form or book a consultation. But, or you could just email us, team@noirlabs.org. But in an ideal situation, your hiring managers, the people who this person might report to, the people for whom this person's outputs and metrics are going to be most critical, those are the people who are going to do the deep dive on the resume, the LinkedIn, the color test, the human guide. And so after they've screened and they feel like, okay, this is potentially a good candidate, that is when, and they would probably have a conversation potentially with that person before bringing them to the team that they would be working with. But it's very important, I believe, that the team that they'll be working with, the people that they would be working with day to day, have the opportunity to get to know them, have the opportunity to ask them these questions, and have the opportunity to be part of the hiring process. A lot of times we're in a job and somebody just gets hired and it's like, oh, okay, I gotta work with this person now, right? But imagine if you actually get to play a role, even if you're not their superior. Imagine you actually get to play a role in the process of bringing them in. You actually get to give your feedback to the team on how you felt the conversation went, right? This is how you cultivate harmony in teams, because now it's not just somebody got dropped on your team and you got to figure out how to work with them. You are actually part of the onboarding process with this person. And so you have ownership. You are now feeling responsible for helping them succeed as they come into the team, right? So there's so many benefits to this process, but I could go on and on about that. I want to wrap up and just talk about specifics when it comes to Nigerian talent. Because that's the thing that I've been seeking to express for so long and not fully getting into. And so in this filtering in process, I talked about how people can represent themselves one way and end up being another way. And so this is not necessarily super specific to just Nigerian talent, but in my experience, Nigerian talent, like I said, we had a team of about 11 people in 2020. There was one Nigerian on the team, and that person was born and raised in the States. No, not born and raised in the States, but came to the States young. Everybody else was from the States, right? And so I implemented the same things that I'm talking about with the Nigerian team, implemented with them, the human guide system, agile methodology, all of that. The teams that I worked with before that, 99% of them US-based, work with people in Australia, work with people in Ukraine, Italy, all over the world, London. In any hiring situation, you can have people who can represent themselves one way and end up being another way, right? And so it's very important to assess. I think I talked about this in one of the earlier videos, and I need to go into depth assessment. And so for you to understand, and so this human guide process is part of the assessment. Again, it's a process where people really have to be honest. It's going to be really difficult for somebody to misrepresent themselves. you're assessing their sort of personality and their the type of human that they are. And one of the questions on it, we asked about birth dates. And so I'm scanning and I'm like, all right, you're a Virgo. All right, you're a Gemini. All right, you're this, right? That's not enough information to make a decision, but it's part of the, it's part of the package, right? So we're assessing them as a person, as a spirit being, as, a constellation. And then now you want to assess their skill set. You want to understand how well they execute in their actual role, right? In the actual role that they've held in the past and that you want them to hold in your organization. And so this is where a lot of organizations have issues, because sometimes we bring people in either with a lack of clarity on what their role is going to be, or we bring people in without absolute clarity on their level of capability, their level of ability, their level of talent. It's one thing for someone to put a good resume together. It's one thing, for folks to be able to articulate themselves, articulate well, articulate their value well. It's another thing for them to execute. I've gotten gypped, okay? And I'm sure some of y'all hiring managers out there have probably gotten gypped in your life, right? You can hire somebody who seems perfect and then they get in the door and like nothing is happening. And you're like, well, what is going on? Like, how did this happen? I thought we checked off all the boxes, right? I saw the portfolio. I talked to the references. I did all this. I did all that. References are important too, but how do you assess that somebody can actually do what they are saying that they can do? Oftentimes you don't really know. If you're hiring somebody cold that's not been referenced or, referred to you by someone who has worked with them, you don't really know until you work with them. And it's one thing to know that they can execute. It's another thing to know that they can execute on your team, in your environment, with the way that you work. We are a very flexible team at NOIR Labs. Everybody's remote, fully remote. And it's always been that way, except for like that summer of the fellowship where we were, 3 out of 4 of our team members were in New Haven working together in the summer fellowship. There's never been a time since then. Well, let me take that back. When it was 2 of us working for NOIR Labs and barely getting anything done, we were co-located. That's a whole other story for another day, right? But for the most part, for 99% of our history, our teams have been remote. And so remote and flexible. So in 2020, we had a very rigid structure. We were working like 9 to 5 every day, everybody. In 2024 now, a lot of people are working 9 to 5 on our team, but that's really up to them. Right now, we focus on deliverables. We focus on purpose. We focus on, responsibility. What are your outcomes? What are your outputs that you are responsible for? We've brought on a lot of people at the same time. So there's been a learning curve. There's been an adaptive curve across the board, storming, forming, all of that. But our focus is to make sure that everybody understands their responsibility to deliver success within their area in the organization, right? And so you have to be somebody who can be self-directed. This is what I love about Agile. Agile is about self-directing teams, cultivating individuals who can execute independently, who can understand their responsibility, and who can feel a sense of responsibility to the team, and who can do what they're expected to do. And it's not to say they don't interact. We have meetings all the time. We have all the tools. We use Jira. But if you're somebody who needs to be babysat, you need somebody on your shoulder, like, is it done? Is it done? Not gonna last very, very long. Not working directly with me. You might work under one of my managers, but I don't have the patience for that. So assessing if somebody can work well in your environment, in your organization is a specific, assessment area, right? And so that's why we bring everybody on probationary. We get as much detail as possible together to, for them to review and understand the role. Sometimes when we are bringing people in, We design the role together. We define the role together. We create a Google Doc. We say, this is what we expect that you're going to be able to do. Give us your feedback, right? And there are a few things to watch out for in this particular process. When you are engaging with somebody who you want to put in a particular role, you're going to want to pay attention to how eager they are and how measured their consideration is of the role, the opportunity, and what they would be doing, and their ability to deliver. So one thing you have to understand about Nigeria and places like Nigeria, where you have a lot of youth who are unemployed and who have bleak sense of the future, they don't have a sense of where life is going for them because there's limited opportunities. There's hunger. And we could talk about hunger for food. I'm talking about hunger, okay? They're hungry. They're hungry for opportunity. They're hungry to get paid. They're hungry for success. And in Nigeria, just like any other place in the world, you have lots of economic classes. You got young people who are comfortable because their family's comfortable. And you have young people who, if they don't get their hands on some work, they're not going to make it. That's that kind of hungry, right? So when somebody is hungry, that can influence their values. It can influence their decisions, right? Because if they're operating in survival mode, they might make decisions that are not focused on integrity, but are focused on survival. You got to understand that, people want to live, right? And so sometimes you might come across people who want the role so bad because they want to get paid. They need the opportunity, but they can't necessarily do the role well. They can talk a good game. They can put together a good package. They can look really good, but they can't actually execute on what you need, right? And some people will do things like have candidates. So if you're hiring a scrum master, you might have them do some sort of like test planning on Jira, or have them do some sort of automation. I don't know. It's just like anything in the interview process. Software developers especially they're required to write code, right? In the design process, and design onboarding process, you might have. These are all things that I highly recommend, especially when hiring overseas and Nigerian talent in particular. Let them do something for you, original. Maybe you're willing to actually sit there on Zoom with them while they work on something for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Maybe you want to see how they use Illustrator. Maybe you want to see how they use Jira. Maybe you want to see how they get around GitHub. Maybe you want them to write a script that does something, right? It's always a good idea to test people's actual skill set. And this is something that we are going to be doing more of in the future as we onboard people. But you want to create those, and this is more so if you're bringing people into your team for the longer term, as opposed to like it's a freelancer who you want to execute, a very like finite scope of work, right? So the thought came to mind as I mentioned freelancer. I thought about things like insurance and things like benefits, and I want to get to that. That's probably going to be the next episode, but really want to focus on assessment. So using that time period to the time period of interviewing to get as much information as you can about what they're capable of, and also, encourage them to learn about your organization, ask questions about your organization. You demonstrate to them how things work in your organization so they can truly understand if they can function well, if they can succeed in your organization. And then when you do the probationary period, where you bring the person in on a trial run and you give them a project up front to see how they do, that is another form of assessment, obviously. When you do that type of assessment, then when you do that type of assessment, you're getting to see how they interact with your team. You're getting to see how they interact with your tools. You're getting to see how they execute on your requests. How well do they listen? How well do they understand? How well do they ask questions? One of the things I forgot to mention that happens before you bring them into the team in that initial review and assessment process, we have like a form where we have them rate their proficiency with the specific tools that we use, right? So whether it's Airtable, it's Jira, it's Typeform, it's Google Docs, it's Toggle, it's Slack. We want to know, are they familiar? It's GPT, it's Claude. Require all my team to use AI. It is a requirement. Don't waste time doing stuff that AI can do. Why? Why would we have you do that? We've already assessed you to understand that you are intelligent. We've already assessed you to understand that you are self-organized, self-directed. We've already assessed you to understand that you are passionate about what we do, that you care, that you actually want to perform, that you're not here to just collect a check, right? We've already assessed all those things. So if that's clear, if you are here because you are passionate about what we do and you want to succeed and you want to execute, I don't care if you want to use GPT. I want you to be efficient. I want you to get stuff done fast. I want you to get stuff done at the highest quality level. I use GPT. Why would I spend 2 weeks doing something I could do in an hour? Why would I do that? But check your work. Don't send me no GPT stuff you haven't reviewed, because you're a human and I hired you because you're intelligent and you're capable. So GPT is a tool. It's not a brain. We'll come back to that. So yeah, so we do like a tool assessment process, which is still being iterated on, but I highly recommend that to understand, it gives you an opportunity as well to do a proper inventory of the tools that you use, right? And to be able to have that clarity on like, these are the tools that we need people to be comfortable with. And here is the process for maybe them getting more comfortable. As you bring people in and you're training them, that's part of actually your onboarding process needs to be. You need to have a document, a Confluence section, a website, whatever, where you're laying out the different tools that you use. You're providing some sort of introductory video or reading for people to understand how to navigate it if they're not an expert, because you might use 10, 12 tools. Not everybody's going to be, 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 with those tools. So it's important for you to articulate for your team members how you want them to use those tools, how you use them as an organization, and here's some information, right? And here's some information for them to learn how to navigate the tool, right? What are the other critical things? So assessment is really the biggest thing. Some of the advantages of working with youth and talent in Nigeria in terms of time zone, sometimes for people, time zone is an issue. I see it as a benefit because, for me being in the US on the East Coast, my team being in Nigeria means that by the time I'm ready to work, they've already been executing. I'm waking up to announcements. I'm waking up to summaries. I'm waking up to updates, right? I'm logging in and I'm seeing a dashboard that's up to date because they've already been working for 5 hours. You know what I mean? So you can structure the workday however you want. What we do, I basically let people work when they want to work, but I tell you that you have to be online. If you're taking the role, you have to be online, available, responsive, and capable of joining calls without noise in the background within a certain time window, right? Which is a time window when I'm going to be online and I'm going to be answering questions and I'm going to be reviewing work. And I want to make sure that you are able to be responsive to me in that time. If you're not reporting to me, you're not working directly with me, you just need to be available when your direct, your manager is looking for you, right? And you can be available in such a way that when your manager needs to send a report to me, they've been able to get those updates from you, all right? So we do things like capacity tracking, which is very much an agile thing that is critical, right? You need to be able to have people define what their capacity is going to be ahead of your sprints, sprint planning, all of that. So that's the time difference. So coming back to this question of passion and interest in what your organization does, you'll find that you're not going to have as many issues trying to figure out when can people be available, because when people are passionate about what you do and they want to succeed and they want to excel in the role, they're going to go to the ends of the earth. They're going to work as hard as they can. They're going to go above and beyond to deliver on the outcomes and the outputs that you are meant to, that they're meant to deliver for you, right? So when I talk about Nigerian youth and working with Nigerian youth, one of the things that I have to highlight is the grit. In my personal experience, probably because of the pool that I'm hiring from, I see so much grit. I see so much passion. I see so much commitment to the work. so much commitment to excellence, to getting better, to growing, to improving, to learning. 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 This is one of the key critical things. Oh my God, and then we got to wrap this up. I can't tell you how long we've been going. Jesus, it's late. I can't believe I'm doing this at this hour, but I told myself I wasn't going to waste this beat. You can't waste a good beat, right? Learning is a whole other episode. I will give you just some introductory stuff on learning and skills development and training. Even the best schools in Nigeria, even if someone went to the best colleges, worked for the best companies, there will be some learning gaps. This might be true of people you hire from anywhere. There may be some critical learning gaps. And these learning gaps could be cultural, just in terms of the environment being different and them just not being familiar with what are your cultural norms in your environment. Those are often, I almost want to say those are easiest to address or to identify in a sense. They're not necessarily the easiest to solve, but because they're easy to identify, if you're looking out for that, then you're quite likely to be able to create a plan to address that, address it successfully. If it's more than cultural, right? So even if somebody didn't go to the best schools in Nigeria, then there will be a skills gap. There may be language gaps. There may be etiquette gaps, right? Decorum gaps. And that decorum is a little bit cultural, but it's also, it has to do with the kind of environment and the kind of experiences you've had, whether it's education or professional. And so these are things that you want to look out for in the interview process, in the onboarding process. You want to be conscious of, what your deal breakers are, right? You want to be conscious of what those are and identify if this person is breaking your deal. At the same time, you can be conscious of okay, this is something that we can fix. We can work together to address, right? This might be a small thing. There might be a subtle tweak that's needed. You want to be clear on that, right? Because there might be cultural gaps that are too big for you to really address, that you don't want to address, you don't want to invest the time and energy into. And then there might be cultural gaps where it's really easy, right? As far as the skills gaps, the knowledge gaps, that is where training comes in. Every organization should be committed to the professional development and even the personal development of their team members. I fundamentally believe that. Of course, what we do at NOIR Labs is about liberating all people from within. We started out focusing on liberating Black people from within. We ended up building a framework that could apply to anybody, anywhere in the world, and they would benefit, right? We believe in self-actualization. That is why we do this work. We believe everybody should have the opportunity to access the route to self-actualization, to true self-actualization, to the fulfillment of your purpose, right? And so considering that that is what we believe and that's what we're passionate about, it only follows that we would build a structure within our organization that would allow our team members to thrive. It would allow us to cultivate their genius. It would allow us to help them to grow on their roadmap to their North Star, right? And so if you know what your deal breakers are and you're able to find people who don't, who are not deal breakers or whatever, they don't have characteristics that are deal breakers, but you identify some gaps. There's some things that they don't know in terms of maybe their etiquette, in terms of maybe their communication skills. That's been a big one sometimes with dealing with folks overseas, in terms of the actual competency for the role that they're in, right? I find that if someone shares your values, your passion, and core skill sets that you need, and have core skill sets that you need, you can work with them on the other stuff, right? That's just my position. And particularly if there is a gap in cost, because one of the best advantages for startups and small companies and nonprofits for working with talent in Nigeria in particular is that you're likely going to pay anywhere between 20 to 30% of the cost that you would pay to hire someone of the equivalent experience level, the equivalent knowledge in the US or in the West, right? you are going to be paying literal pennies on the dollar in a sense. We have a formula for how we calculate what people should be paid, but truly realizing some things, truly, you have the opportunity to really better someone's life by hiring them at a rate that maybe double or more what they could get locally for their talents. Considering how limited opportunities are, they might not be able to get anything, no matter how talented they are. They might still struggle for months, maybe even years to get something quality in terms of a role. So, first of all, you're providing an opportunity, you're providing a job. Second of all, you're providing a job that's going to pay them better than their local market can, right? And you are saving 70%, 80%, maybe sometimes 60, depending on the role, depending what you're seeking for them to do, depending on how, if you want to be full-time or not. You are saving a lot of money and you are protecting yourself from racism, that might occur when dealing with people from other parts of the world that offer lower cost, high value services. You might be protecting yourself from a number of different things. And so I highly, highly recommend working with Nigerian talent. I'm just thinking about what else I wanted to include here. I gotta go see y'all. Assessment. I'm thinking about remuneration. I want to talk about that in depth in the next one a bit more. So I've talked about like the exchanges. I mean, the NOIR is super weak right now. I think last time I checked, it was 1,500. I'm not gonna check right now, but you can Google, $1 to how many NOIR, right? And you'll find out that you'll also be able to see the change over time, right? So it's one thing to be able to see that, okay, it's 1,500 NOIR to $1, which is crazy. You'll also be able to see that the NOIR plummeted, the value of the NOIR plummeted over the last year plus, right? And so these things give you an advantage when you're in the West because your money, your dollar, your pound, your sterling, your euro goes so much further and is able to achieve so much more in that context working with people there than it would have otherwise been able to. Your money goes further than it otherwise would have been able to. In addition to that, you're basically helping, it's almost like a form of remittances or reparations, right? Because you are literally benefiting somebody on the ground. And especially for Nigerian founders and entrepreneurs, a lot of you are already doing this. You're already hiring talent on the ground in Nigeria. If you're not, it is one of the best things you could do for your country, okay, to get your country to a better state, is to build the kind of organizations, build the kind of platforms, build the type of businesses, services, etc., that will allow you to hire as many Nigerian youth as you can, right? Spread the word for other people to hire Nigerian youth, but be prepared to provide thorough and in-depth training and be very patient. Be very patient. You're going to want to be very patient in the way that you communicate. First of all, being patient and being respectful as a boss, as a team lead is just default human sense, right? It's common sense. But when you're working with folks who are in a different cultural context, who might have some gaps in skills development based on the kind of education system that they experience, who may just operate a little differently when it comes to the professional environment, you're going to need a lot of grace, right? And so it's a question of what you're willing to experience, right? Some people are not willing to put up with some of these challenges that might occur. Internet is a challenge when working with teams on ground in Nigeria. Just volatility, just danger, just all the things that happen in places like Lagos, right? These are all things that can impact your work. There was an outage last year, and then not to blame anybody, well, earlier this year, but there was an outage, it was an internet outage. It doesn't happen often in the West, right? But these are things that your teammate might deal with when living in Nigeria or on the continent. There was a major internet outage during the week before we were supposed to soft launch a product, right? It was pretty bananas. It was terrifying. I had to pray, right? There are acts of God that will happen in a Nigerian context that may not be as likely in other contexts. You have to be prepared for that. You have to be prepared for your team member getting robbed or, mugged. You have to be prepared for somebody, I'm not calling this to myself or to any of you, but there are things that are happening in that environment that are very dangerous and very risky. And so part of your responsibility as an employer of talent is to guide your team, is to support your team in their mental health, in their mental well-being, in their psychosocial health and well-being, really providing the kind of education, resources, and tools that help to cultivate the whole person so that that whole person can show up to work for you with a full cup and to be able to pour into your organization and be a blessing to your organization as opposed to draining from you or draining from it and being, harmful to the organization. I could talk about this topic for days, but we have gone on far longer than necessary. So I hope that you got something out of this. I hope that if you are thinking about building an overseas team, whether in Nigeria or elsewhere, that some of these tips and tools make sense for you. If you want to see our human guide, do not complete it. I think that we have to put like a code on it for people to actually utilize it. But if you go to noirlabs.org, and I think it's under like join on the menu, there should be an option like applicant human guide, right? You could take a look at that. It's probably not going to be accessible for very long. So that's one example, one tool that I can share with you now. As far as platforms for finding talent, there is, what is it called? Diversity something. Let me look them up. But I did find some really great talent with them before. And this is a Black Jamaican woman owned platform. So I highly, highly, highly recommend. So they have youth in Nigeria and they have youth in the Caribbean, which I think is very amazing. Diversity board, is that what they're called? I haven't gotten emails from them in a while, I just noticed. I'll get the name for you, but that's just one platform. I talked about MLP. You could Google, you could kind of look around on Instagram for different communities of folks that you want to work with that may be interested in the passions. I'm in like a fashion group, right? Whenever I see people posting Telegram groups or WhatsApp groups for specific skill areas or passion areas, particularly dealing with Nigerian youth, I'm in there, right? And those tend to be opportunities to find people, like-minded people and talent. What else can I offer you? I don't know if Echoing Green, because the human guide is something that was inspired by a workshop done by one of the leads at Echoing Green at that time. This was years ago. And I'm just thinking that they might have some resources on their site. I encourage you to take a look there. That's all I got. That's all I got. You guys are gonna go to sleep. Love to know your questions. Love to know your thoughts. Love to know if this was helpful to you. Love to know if you are trying to build a team, where you're at with that, what challenges you might be having, what your successes have been. Let's talk. Let's talk more. All right. This has been Building by Technology with Olori Lolade, Skin Daily Life. I know my name. I can say my name. Founder of NOIR Labs. We are doing amazing things. Check us out at noirlabs.space, noirlabs.org. And we're on LinkedIn. We're on all the platforms. Besides from LinkedIn, you could just want to look for our noirpress page, which will link you to the other NOIRfest page. We are gearing up for a February 2025 NOIRfest event. We are engaging potential sponsors and partners for our New World Haven narrative, funded by the Mellon Foundation and New Haven Arts Council. We're inviting partners for that project in different capacities. If you want to help us, if you want to share your New Haven story, you want to help us identify what stories need to be told, we would love to hear from you. You can go to portalx.space/new-world-haven. If you put in portalx.space/new, it'll pop up just like that. Okay? This has been a pleasure. I love you. I appreciate you for watching, and we will talk very soon. Peace.